Yeah, should figured he was a furry on top of everything else. Cold opener featured Doremi ogling over boy number 2093, I think. And the episode proper opened on the Wizard's World as Gigi and Oyaji discussed their next course of action. The former decided to assign some backup to the latter, which, yeah, after seeing that episode title, you can kind of guess where this is going. Meanwhile, the Ojamajo were dealing with Hana, who was suffering from a little cabin fever, having been forced to stay at home at the Mahodo. Know the feeling, kid. Well, actually, Majorika was being justifiably cautious, wanting to make sure that she wasn't taken by Oyaji again. Of course, the Ojamajo did have their super forms to repel him with, but as it turned out, it would require all 4 of them to activate it, meaning that they would all have to go if they just wanted to take Hana out on a simple walk, and they all had conflicting schedules, which is a tad bit iffy of excuse in my opinion. I mean, I'm not saying they can't be busy, especially Onpu, but they couldn't do anything on the weekend when they would also have to close down the Mahoto, which was another reason they didn't want to take her out. I don't know, it just feels a little forced, especially considering the meta reason they were doing all this. Because just as they were wondering if there was a convenient solution to their conundrum, the queen called them in to give them some new toys. Hooray, y'all get to pretty much double dip on the same toy. Alright, they're not exactly the same as we'll get to in just a sec, but wow, way to make one of your first major toys of this second season suddenly obsolete. What, do y'all take design advice from Apple? But yeah, these iPhone 10 24/7s were meant to transfer magic through the lines so that they could remotely cast the magical stage and by extension activate the Patorain forms. And while I'll admit, it's an interesting idea that could have a lot of practical application, well, we'll talk more about it when we actually get to that part of the episode. Anyway, after they got back, the titular mystery boy named Akatsuki had arrived at the shop, and coincidentally, Oyaji was very discreetly awaiting his chance to siege the Mahodo, which came as soon as he started stalking Onpu again. I repeat, I still do not care for this character. Y'all don't need magic to use one of these. However, Akatsuki managed to literally trip him up, and our heroines used the most powerful weapon in their repertoire, the Porisman. With that, they thanked the boy for his assistance, who continued to lay on the charm. By the way, why do you sound like my first love interest, as well as a few other characters in this show? Shut up, the second season was a bit of a rush job, and we could only afford so many VAs for the show. But yeah, he was pretty clearly hitting on Doremi to the point that Aiko had to rightfully cringe out of her skin over it. Man, not too surprisingly, the character with the name Akatsuki turned out to be a spy. This kid better not have an overcomplicated, nonsensical plot involving his family or something. The next day, he invited Doremi out on a date to the Pang farm with Hana, of course. Yep, not too surprisingly, everything was going according to his plan, with even Majorika and Lala laying down their guards. Though, kind of ironically, the one who could pick up that this kid was a little sus was the toddler. I say kind of, because kids do tend to have better stranger danger senses when they're younger for whatever reason. At the same time, Oyaji was following them and hopefully stepping on a few cow pies. And I guess this farm must be pretty loaded if they could manage to get a Sentai sponsorship. No Sentai! Y'all have way better costumes than the actual Battle Sentai. And in a nice bit of characterization, Akatsuki revealed that he was pretty based as he became an instant fan of the show and even tried to win a giveaway Chogokin figure. The audience played a game of rock, paper, scissors for it, which he ended up losing, but Doremi wanted for it in his place. As a result, he did almost forget his mission and needed to be reminded by Oyaji. Mark my words, the Hoge will be the harbingers of the apocalypse. He led Doremi and Hana down a secluded path where Oyaji was waiting for an ambush. Our little witch tried to stop him with her normal magic, but of course it didn't work.
Quick, detach those and use them as missiles!
Nah, that would actually be kind of cool, but instead they had to push the new toys. So, okay, in order to remotely activate the Patarain forms, Doremi needed to set up a group chat, and then they would have to go through the whole transformation sequence, complete with summoning the magical stage.
So, yeah, I'm a little conflicted about this development.
On the one hand, as I always say, I like world building, and expanding the protagonist's skill set certainly qualifies as such, and the new animation of the magic coming out of the phones is pretty nice, and adds a unique new touch to the magical stage animation.
My only problem is that it kind of conflicts with something they established in their previous encounter, casting time.
So, in order to get all of this to work, the Ojamajo had to set up a group chat, find an inconspicuous space to transform, and cast their usually lengthy magical stage spell. Realistically, all of this should take at least like 5 minutes to get done, and while those first two steps were kind of skipped thanks to Hana conveniently distracting Oyaji, they still had to go through the whole magical stage in order to activate their Patarain forms. During all of that, Oyaji would have had enough time to escape, as it has been established that spellcasting does take time. I don't know, this all just feels a little too overly convenient after the previous episodes made a big deal out of them needing to streamline and improve their magic. Whatever, Doremi managed to save Hana thanks to some reverse Evil Dead trees, and then sent Oyaji blasting off again. Akatsuki was also forced to call it quits, so he reunited with Doremi to try and sway away any suspicions, which, considering Doremi, as long as he reminds her that he's a cute boy, then all will be forgotten in seconds. Granted, he wasn't making himself look any less suspicious by suddenly disappearing, but I guess he just really wanted to clock out for the day. With that, the episode ended with Doremi still being love-struck by the wizard spy, much to her friend's dismay.
My more personal issues with the Patarain calls aside, this was still overall well done plot episode, which after last week's episode is a breath of fresh air.
They effectively introduced a new antagonistic character who has a decent number of layers to him from the offset, and whatever the case, they also did provide a significant power-up for our protagonists.
Though honestly, considering what else the writer of this particular episode has done, I guess piling it on with the toys has always kind of been a thing with them.
The writer of this episode was the eventual longtime writer of the Precure franchise, Yoshimi Narita, which shouldn't be all that surprising, as along with the aforementioned knack for pushing new toys in what would become the major cash cow for toy animation, she also has always had a thing for cheesy rom-coms. So cheesy that even her characters end up commenting on the schmaltziness of it all, and yeah, while it doesn't always work out for the better, there is always at least some basis for laughs, along with some good slapstick that she throws into all of her scripts, including this one. Yeah, while I could certainly use less Oyaji being a total creeper, seeing him get the Chris Hansen treatment does kind of make up for it. On that note, his punch clock assistant Akatsuki was an interesting new character. For the most part, he did have competent plans and clearly knows how to manipulate everyone around him, making him feel like infinitely more of a threat than his assigned superior. And yet, he's also not just some edgy teen, as he does have a thing for action figures and toys, not that I would know what that's like, making for a bit more of a layered antagonist. He, for the most part, really held up this episode, as other than the new plot elements like him and the Patarain calls, there really wasn't a lot to this one, like no deeper themes or lessons, other than maybe some stranger danger. Still, for the sake of the overarching plot, it is a good idea to introduce this stuff, even if some of it is a little iffy in my opinion. But again, more of a personal gripe than anything. And overall, this was a fun outing, as is often the case with many Yoshimi Narita scripts. While I don't approve of needless phone upgrades, I do approve of them being used for their ultimate functions.
As always, I do hope that y'all are having a nice week, considering that these videos usually come out in the middle of it.
I do also hope to see you all for our usual weekly reviews of the current Precure season, as well as some of the longer form projects we have going, whenever I can be barred to get them done.
Still look forward to all of that. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go get my diary changed on this guy. Because screw getting the new models.